Hello everyone. I hope we all had a nice day. I don't know where you are joining us from in the world. I will quickly share my screen. I need you to tell me whether you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Good. All right. So our topic today is how to run successful Scrum events. And definitely in running Scrum events, there are activities that we want to make sure that this Scrum event actually determine a lot when we're running or we're managing Agile teams. First of all, you ask yourself that how do you maximize value as a Scrum Master or as an Agile transformation expert? What you're actually doing is you're trying to maximize value as much as possible. You're responsible for your Scrum teams, and and for all those Scrum events, you want to make sure that they are efficient, effective, and valuable. I know a lot of times we have people that would say, my Scrum team are tired of all the meetings. They are tired of various meetings. They are tired of us having all, like daily Scrum every day, or for us to have sprint planning all the time. They are tired of having retrospectives. But as we go along, you get to understand the reason why these events are the way they are, and the reason why they are time boxed. The reason why, for instance, daily Scrum is 15 minutes and it's not 1 hour. So one of the main reasons is we want to maximize value, right? We want to also maintain rhythm and cadence. Scrum is actually, or Agile is supposed to be interactive and incremental delivery. And for the reading allows us to be able to reduce the complexity and also increase our predictability. There's a reason why we have shorter sprints, and why we actually advise shorter sprints over longer sprints, and because it makes it for us to be able to deliver incrementally. So imagine if you have to take a whole 8 weeks for a customer to see a demo of what you've done, and compared to when you have only taken 2 weeks to do that same thing. You might not have been able to develop that product to that level, but you'll be able to get customer feedback quickly. And that's why we always advise shorter sprints over longer sprints. Now, another thing I will state here is we have to try as much as possible to stop doing Scrum halfway. And so we have a lot of teams that do Scrum halfway, in the sense that they don't run through all the things that they need to do. For instance, some teams will do daily Scrum twice a week or thrice a week. It's because people don't really understand the event purpose, and that makes it hard for them to actually want to run the daily Scrum. Yeah, and this is often caused by lack of clarity and also sense of purpose about Scrum events. So as a Scrum Master, you try as much as possible to focus the purpose of this Scrum event. And also you teach your Scrum team about each purpose. You have to explain to them, especially if it's not a mature team. You need to make them understand the reason for each of the Scrum events. And also you try to discourage them from doing Scrum halfway, so that you can maximize value for the team and the organization. Another point here is we need to try as much as possible to improve continuously, and also gather feedback from our Scrum team and stakeholders. You can remember that I said just not long ago that, during your sprint demo or sprint review, you bring your stakeholders on board, they review what you've done, and, you give them back and they give you feedback. And that is, you want to continuously improve. And one of the reasons why you run retrospective at the end of every sprint is because for each retrospective, you're able to find maybe one barrier, one impediment, or one issue that, if you resolve it, it's actually going to make your team work better or to make their work easier, right? But the truth is, for everyone, Scrum or Agile, yes, it's easy to understand, but the hard part is, mastering Scrum process or mastering Agile process. So for a lot of teams, for a lot of people, they struggle with mastery of Scrum process. So another point I would also say here, just before we go into reviewing our Scrum events one by one, is you have to take ownership. So if and I'm not saying this only for Scrum Master. So even if you're a project manager and you use Agile methodology, you have to take ownership of the process, right? You have to take the driver's seat. Because you're actually responsible. If you're a project manager, you are actually responsible for the success or failure of that project. And you have to have a clear purpose for each event that you're hosting. And in most cases, most of those events are not even hosted by the Scrum Master. Scrum Master most times is just there to facilitate it. But of course, in the case of project manager will be the one to also host this event. But for this our discussion, I will refer more to a Scrum Master than a project manager. But you can always understand what I'm trying to pass whenever I say Scrum Master or project manager. Most of the events, apart from the retrospective, most of the events, the Scrum Master is not the host. He's just there to for instance, during your daily Scrum, it's not your duty to say, oh, Mr. A, is your turn to speak, Mr. B, your turn to speak. The team, you are trying to create a self-organizing team, and that is what a development team is all about. They are self-organizing. You are just there to coach them, to facilitate things, to teach them how to remove impediments. But of course, in the case of Agile project management, you are the impediments remover. You are not just coaching them; you're actually helping them to remove that impediment. So that's like one major difference between being a Scrum Master and the project manager. Because once you're a Scrum Master, your work majorly is to improve the performance of the team, and you teach them to be able to do it themselves. So one thing you should try to do is don't be the one leading your daily Scrum. Just facilitate the whole process, and maybe at the end of the daily Scrum, you can drop 1 or 2 tips for the team to improve what they are currently doing or how they are doing their Scrum. But these days, I know that a lot of teams are working remotely, so we don't usually have that stand-ups. Daily Scrum is also the daily stand-up. So the next point the next tip I'm going to give here is to respect the time box, right? This time box is like I put here, is to create focus for the team, and for the team to discuss the things that are valuable. And you have to try as much as possible to use time box to your advantage. So for sprint planning, for instance, if it's a 2 weeks sprint, I don't expect you to spend 1 times 2. That's more than 2 hours for that sprint planning. If it's a 4-week sprint, if it's a 3-week sprint, I don't expect you to spend more than 1 times 3. That's 3 hours for that sprint planning. For daily Scrum, is not, don't exceed 15 minutes, because once you exceed that 15 minutes, you find that a lot of times you'll be talking about things that don't really matter during the Scrum. Scrum is majorly to focus on what you are working on, right? And maybe what you've done so far, what you want to do today, and if you have any impediment along the way, and always make sure that during that daily scrum, the increment of the work they are reporting is towards the sprint goal, right? So if you see yourself spending 30 minutes on daily scrum, then you are not doing daily scrum the right way. So try as much as possible to respect the time box. Another thing that you should do is, when you're doing your retrospectives, make sure everything is timed and try as much as possible to follow the same cadence for your respective Scrum events. Now, we'll talk about the Scrum events one by one. And the first one we'll talk about is the sprint planning. So for the sprint planning, I said, start with creating the sprint goal together with the Scrum team, right? So of course you have your product backlog or sprint backlog, and it's very important for you when you're doing your sprint planning to also state that for this sprint, what is our goal? So our goal is, by the end of this sprint, we want to do the user, we want to create the user interface for this app for iPhones and Androids, right? So that's the goal, for instance. So for during your daily scrum, for instance, you have to now make sure that all the reports during that daily scrum is towards that sprint goal, right? Create a clear and actionable plan for the sprint with tasks of 1 day or less. So you break it down to different tasks for that sprint, and then also ensure that you have your definition of done for each of the stories that you're writing. Then make sure that it's only ready items that you put into the sprint. That means these are items that everything that needs to make it a story, complete story, is already there. So the requirements, the definition of done, the story points, make sure it's ready for it to be in the sprint before you put it on the sprint. And also, for instance, if you have capacity for, let's say you have a 100% capacity for your team, nobody's going on any vacation, don't use the whole 100% for the sprint, saying that, okay, since we have 100% capacity, then we use up our story points. No, keep some story points. So if the team is capable of doing 60 story points, it doesn't mean that because everybody is available 100%, you use the whole 60 story points. No, you try as much as possible to keep some points in case that you need to fix some bugs or something comes up from the clients and they really want you to quickly work on it. So you have space for uncertainties, or if somebody needs to go, maybe something happens and someone falls sick, so you have time, you have enough space to be able to take those uncertainties. And for daily scrum, you try as much as possible to stick to your 15 minutes time. Can you still see my screen? Hello?
Yes, we can hear, we can see your screen.
Okay. We try as much as possible to make this session as interactive as possible. So if you need to, say one or two things, but of course we'll still run through our question and answers, so that I know that you are listening to me on the other end, because I can't see anybody on the camera. So that I know that I'm speaking to someone on the other end. So for daily scrum, like I said, I've said this before and I'm going to repeat it again because I noticed that some people do make that mistake. Try as much as possible to stick to your 15 minutes time box. Enough said about that, right? Make sure that during the daily scrum, you are actually checking the progress toward the sprint goal. So someone comes and say, our sprint goal is to develop the user interface for Android and iPhone, right? So, and the person says, okay, we've done the sketch of this, we've done this, we've tested this. Make sure it's towards the sprint goal. So because a lot of people start talking about things that don't really matter during the Scrum. Like I said before, let the development team take ownership, right? So the way I run my own daily Scrum is, the team already knows someone may just start, and after maybe saying good morning and and hello and whatnot, someone will start and they will pass the baton around themselves. So when you're done with your own Scrum, you call the next person and you call the next person to go around the team. And if you have some time left before the end of the 15 minutes, I can use that to drop some tips for the team or something I've noticed. So for instance, if I notice that for their stories or for their tasks, they don't put comments after they've worked on those tasks, or maybe they're passing to somebody else, but there's no comment to show that they've actually worked on it or they've done something on it. I use the opportunity to also drop that tip. I said also introduce different practices and techniques to keep the daily Scrum interesting. So a lot of people do a lot of fun activities. There are a lot of formats that you can come up with for the team when they are doing their daily Scrum. So if you are very good, you can always start with an icebreaker before everybody starts going through the Scrum. And I try as much as possible, if you have enough time. Our Scrum on Mondays, I always try as much as possible to make it interesting because it's after a weekend. So always find ways, and I also understand that for each team, what worked for team A may not work for team B. So you have to also understand your team and understand the things that they like. Okay, for sprint review, one thing you have to do as much as possible is to focus on value. If you have a PO, you expect that the PO will also invite, that's the product owner, sorry, or product manager will also invite the stakeholders to the sprint review. And these stakeholders will see what you have been able to do, via the product increments. So you focus on the value delivered. Majorly during the sprint review. I think some people ask questions. I can see some questions in the chat. Okay. All right. All right, thank you. So you try as much as possible to make sure that you're focusing on value. And try not to use technical language or jargon, since these people are just stakeholders. They may not even know what we are talking about, but speak in the language that they understand. Measure the stakeholder satisfaction, so you can create a pool or questionnaire at the end of the sprint review to gauge the feedback from stakeholders. And as much as possible, don't take the shine off the development team. So if they say, oh yeah, that is great, we really like this, always make sure that you are putting the shine on the development team and say, oh yeah, the team did a great job. They actually went through, they made sure that they did this and did that, and they tested this over and over again to make sure that it's good, and we can be marked as done and closed. So you try as much as possible to do that during the sprint review. So the sprint review is actually to showcase what you've actually done. Then let's look at the sprint retrospective. If I'm too fast, I hope I'm not too fast. I hope I'm not too fast.
No, you're not. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, no, you're okay. Tunji, since you want some interaction on the prior one, if you can go back, on the sprint review, what thoughts do you have on doing sprint review when operating in a scaled environment, such as with SAFe, when there are many teams? A team doing its own sprint review is not typically targeted toward the broader stakeholders for what collectively is being worked toward. And so it seems to get de-emphasized often.
Yes, I understand that in a safe environment, is a bit different from, the, in the scaled agile environment is a bit different. But when you're doing sprint review and maybe the stakeholders are not coming, or you don't have stakeholders, maybe like clients or something coming for those sprint review, what I usually do is I look for maybe the RTE for the save, or some architects from the save. I look for key people within that department, and I invite them to the review just to get their feedbacks. And that's always good. And apart from the fact that you can get feedbacks immediately, you also try to create an environment where the team see that there is value to what they are building, right? If they know that there is somebody that is actually appreciating the work they are doing, they put more effort into it. So that happens a lot, so when you don't have that, you can always look for other people that, of course, maybe they're higher up in the organization, to bring them to do sprint review. And that really works all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that. For our retrospective, number one thing is ensure that you do the retrospective, because a lot of people don't do retrospective. You hear a team is complaining that they do too many meetings, and they will not do retrospective after, like, maybe they will say, oh, we only do retrospective after 3 sprints. Now, the advantage of that is by the time you are done with your sprint 1, you are done with your sprint 2, and you are in your sprint 3, and that is when you decide to do retrospective. You've actually forgotten the events that happened in sprint 1. You'll have forgotten the events that happened in sprint 2. Even for a fact, there's something I just did for different teams, is to, create the sprint retrospective board at the beginning of the sprint. So if anything comes to your mind while, we're running up the sprint, you can always go to the board and put it there. But we will not reveal it until the sprint retrospective. The reason for that is so that they don't forget the things or the events that happened during that sprint. So if there is one challenge, or if there's something you want us to keep doing, or if there's something you want us to stop doing, and as you're working, you remember it, you just go to the retrospective board and put it there. But we will only reveal it for everyone to see and for us to review during the sprint retrospective. Now, make sure you gather enough data and observations, right? Because you, as the Scrum Master, you are the coach, you are the mentor, you are the trainer, and you are the facilitator for that Scrum team. So you can see that, oh, everybody is saying something towards this. They are saying that, oh, they're having this same issue. You have 2-3 people in the team saying the same thing. So take notes. And of course, you know that you have, as the Scrum Master or maybe the project manager, you have to find a way of fixing that problem. Have an agenda in place before you start. Have a format. Once in a while, you may have to change the format of your retrospective. I know that a lot of teams do what should we continue to do? What should we stop doing? But there are so many other ones. For instance, there is one called KALM, KALM. So K is for keep, so the things you want us to keep doing. A is for the things you want us to add that we're not currently doing. L is for less. So the things that we're doing in the team that you want us to do less. And M is for more. So the things that we're currently doing, but you feel that we're not doing enough. So there are different kind of retrospectives. You can check, let me put that in the chat.
Yeah, I was about ready to let you know. You do have a question. Oh, sorry. You do have a question in the chat as well.
Okay, let me check that out.
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay, ma'am. It's okay. I was about to say the same thing, that I would really appreciate if you can put that in the chat.
Yep,
so we can also adopt that method.
Yep, because we just had a question from the LinkedIn Live that I wanted to make, that I posted in there, but I noticed someone else had posted a question in the chat.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to type some of the retrospectives formats. Just do a Google search of Retromat, fun retrospectives, and you see a lot of them. And you see a lot of them there. But I have some questions here. I think the first one is, what can I do as a Scrum Master to ensure that it's 15 minutes time for daily stand-up in a situation where it's an important issue to discuss, like a blocker or dependency that may impact the sprints? Now, those kind of activities, you would need to put them in the parking lot, right? They are not actually meant to be discussed or trashed out during the daily Scrum, or else you will lose focus on the daily Scrum and it will be something else. So you put them in the parking lot, and you can now create a maybe separate meeting, or the person that is actually facing that problem and the person that can solve the problem, they can actually have their one-on-one meeting and fix the problem, instead of making everybody wait during the meeting or during the daily Scrum and discussing about their impediment. So you can always put it in the parking lot. I think I have another question. Okay, somebody has already answered that question. Ricky G, thank you for, we have similar answers to that. So where was I? Okay, so in your retrospective, try as much as possible to keep it interesting. Make people laugh, and talk about stuff. So you also make sure that your retrospective is not just to get feedbacks, but you create actionable items. So you found out that there's one problem, so you guys come up together and say, okay, what are the actionable items? What are we going to do to fix this problem? Okay, we're not doing this, so what are we going to do to start doing this? And ensure that you give everyone the chance to speak. So for example, we use Azure DevOps, or maybe you use Jira and you're using it for your retrospectives, or maybe you're using any of the online platforms for your retrospective. You ensure that everybody on the team submit a feedback. So everybody submits a feedback, and you ensure that everyone has this chance to speak. So this is one thing I do when you submit your feedback, and we reveal the feedback. So I'll start calling each team member one by one. So they will read out what they've written. So somebody probably wrote, I want us to eat, or I want us to go for coffee breaks often, right? So I'll ask the person to read it, and the person will read it. Okay, I want us to go for coffee break often. And of course, in some cases, I also ask them to give their reasons, or expatiate on whatever they've written. So at the end of the day, make sure you create actionable items. Okay. All right. So let's look at our backlog refinements. Ensure that you also apply some rhythm and cadence here. So for most teams, they plan their backlog meetings maybe like 1 to 2 hours, maybe every Monday or every Wednesday. And this actually reduces the complexity, and it makes it more predictable. And it also makes it easier for stakeholders to also attend those meetings, because they are planned on a regular basis, right? Make sure it's also time boxed. Make sure it's time boxed. So you are doing 45 minutes, you stick to 45 minutes. Focus on what and why. So the goal of your backlog refinement is not just to nail down solutions in technical documentation. No, the goal is to create ready product backlog items that you can actually move into sprints. So focus on the problem you're trying to solve, and actually why that problem is actually a problem. Do your refinement just in time, just enough. Make sure you do it regularly, because that is how you create product backlog that is ready, maybe for the next 1 or 2 or 3 sprints. So your goal is actually to create ready items for the for the sprint. Then you may need to also invite stakeholders and experts to your refinements. So for example, somebody that has the technical depth, maybe you are working on something that is maybe a security feature, you may need to bring an SME in security to give you more expose about that story, for instance. And they will also help with direction. You can ask them questions, and they can also create solutions for the team. I think I have a question in the chat. Let me see. Okay, all right. Now those are just tips and how we can actually improve and run successful Scrum events. So we have this time for QA, and let's make it as interactive as much as possible. So if you have some experience too, you can always share, and it's always very good. I try as much as possible to have a community of Scrum masters or project managers, and we discuss different things happening with our teams, and how we can actually always improve our teams. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be expecting your questions.
Feel free to unmute or type your questions in the chat box.
I have a question. It's not really a question. I just want, please, can you buttress more on technical depth? If you can actually give an example of technical depth. Thank you.
Okay. So for instance, okay, let's say they're trying to build a security feature, and they're bringing a security expert. The security expert can actually tell you the kind of architecture that you're building for, and the things that you need to guide against, the things that you need to build into your code, for instance. Because we have developers, and developers are just skilled in writing code, but you may not have somebody that is actually maybe on your Scrum team. You may not have someone that is actually like an SME on the particular matter. So when you're writing, or when you're doing your backlog refinements, you can bring in such people to give you more insights, because at times when stories are written, they are not clearly written, the requirements and all, so that technical person will give you insights into the requirements, or or tell you more about that story, or how you can go about it.
Okay, thank you so much. So if I what you said, so in a nutshell, it means that when a particular user story is actually not well defined, we actually do not understand the scope of the work of that particular user story, then we invite whosoever that the team thinks that can actually explain better. That is what is called technical depth.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So somebody that actually has more insight into it, and maybe you don't understand. In some cases, some teams struggle with their backlog refinements, especially if they have a PO or PM that there is not a technical product owner or product manager. So they've just written the story, but they cannot give more expose or more details, or go deep into that story. So you bring in an expert to actually help you.
Thank you.
Okay. I also have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and you are doing a great job. Thank you very much. I just want to ask, how do you help a team or an organization that wants the advantage of Agile, but they are not ready to fully implement the Agile process, the Agile ceremony, and and the Agile principles? How do you help such a team or an organization?
So thank you for your question. So you have a lot of organizations that, you know, they like the idea of Agile, but they are not ready to run full Agile. So some people run loose Agile, whereby it's not a full Agile. What you would do, I think, maybe as a project manager, because in most cases those companies will have maybe like project managers, but they want to run Agile project management, is to, you know, maybe you're having a management meeting or you're having a meeting with your head of department to always bring up the advantages of, you know, running a full Agile methodology and the advantages, and, you know, and what you receive in terms of time and in terms of processes when you're running full Agile. If, you know, for people that run loose Agile, a lot of times they don't really understand the benefits. Because they've not tried it before, and they think, oh, for us to run full Agile, we have to commit resources and commit time and we have to train everybody. No, it doesn't have to be like that. It's a gradual process, because the major advantage of that is when you have a full Agile methodology in place for running your project or for running your product development. What happens is, even if the Scrum Master is not available, even if the product owner is not available, it doesn't stop the Scrum team from getting work done. It doesn't stop them from doing what they have to do. So, and that is why you as a Scrum Master, you're trying as much as possible to coach your team so that they are matured and they can do things on their own, right? And, you know, you just check the metrics and see, because there's always room for improvement, and see the things that you can improve. So that's one major thing that I found out, that, you know, is like the major big difference between full Agile and loose Agile.
We do have a couple, oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you for that. I also have another question. How do you handle a key stakeholder that is also serve as a QA, you know, that waits till, you know, like almost the end of the like 50th sprint to come and do a QA, and, you know, almost, you know, rubbish all the previous sprints job that have been done? How do you handle such a stakeholder that is like a QA?
I didn't get your question properly.
Okay, what I'm saying is that, how do you handle a stakeholder that serves like a QA in a team, but waits till like when the 80% of the job is done before he comes to do the QA job, and, you know, he rubbish all the works that have been done by the team?
Okay, thank you. So this is why we say that, you know, short sprints is good, right? If you have shorter sprints, and as soon as work is done, it's passed to the QA. Now, I've had a team that had the same issue before, where they only push the work to the QA. In this case, they only push the work to the QA when the sprint is almost over, and that means the QA will have to rush and do all the testing, and, you know, the QA finds a lot of bugs and they don't have enough time to fix it. So what we try to do is to encourage that work is pushed to the QA as soon as possible, as soon as it's ready for the QA to do the testing, push it to the QA so that if there's any bugs to be fixed, those bugs will quickly be fixed. And even if the QA is not available, you can always push the work. You know, you as the Scrum Master or the project manager, you want to try as much as possible to make the work smooth for your team. So you will be the one contacting that QA if it's not part of the team. But in most cases, for a Scrum team is actually a cross-functional team. That means you have a dev, you have a QA, you have everything in that same team, and you don't have to use one QA for multiple teams. But I understand that may be in a loose Agile environment. So what you have to do is to push those work to the QA, and then let the QA do the testing, so that if any bugs are found, they can quickly be fixed before the sprint is completed.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat box from our LinkedIn Live.
Okay, so I have the first one. Please, should we do backlog refinement for different teams working on different features on the same product all at once? Now, it depends on how the team is is scheduled, or how the team is, how they were created. If they have dependencies for themselves, or if they don't have dependencies for themselves. So I would always suggest that if you have team A, B, C, D, team A, B, C, D they don't have to do their backlog refinement together. They have different stories. They have the way they do their story points are different, and they have different individuals on those teams. So they should do their backlog refinement differently. They don't need to do it together. So far they are different teams, right? They may be working on the same product, but they are different teams. One team may be working on back end, and another team is working on front end. Yes, they are both working on the same product, but they are different teams. And the second question said, I thought technical depth. No, I think what I heard was technical depth. That is DEPTH, not depth, not DEBT. What I heard was technical depth. Technical depths. Okay. There is also one tip for you here, Stevenson, from Ricky. Says, how about adding design review step and having the BA part of the process before it goes to QA? So yes, I always also advise that for Scrum teams or running Agile, is not one size fits all. That means, as I said it before, what works for team A may not work for team B. So you may have to, continuously tweak your process and your methodologies till you're able to find what works for you. Yes, so that's another feedback. The stakeholders should be encouraged to be more active during the sprint review, so they can give their feedback at that time. I don't know. Okay.
We have one more question.
Please, how many teams do you recommend the Scrum Master should be directly responsible for? Okay, I think that is actually left to the organization you are working for, or maybe the RT, that's the release train engineer, to determine or to decide. In some organizations, the team that Scrum Master don't do so much, so they give them a lot of teams, and that has a disadvantage. Disadvantage to that is you may not be able to, align properly with all the teams because you are dealing with too many people. So I always advise that maybe a maximum of 5 teams. 4 seems like a good number, or maybe a maximum of 5, because if you are dealing with too many people, then it may be tough for you. Sorry, give me a sec.
All right, are there any more questions?
Okay, so do we have more questions?
Doesn't look like it. I'm just double checking our LinkedIn Live. Nope, it does not look like it. Does anyone else have any more questions? All right, well.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Okay. I want to ask. Like, how many story points do you think a team should take per sprint?
There is no specific number for a student for any team because, like I said, teams are different from themselves. So the team actually know the number of story points they can take. So for instance, I cannot say because one team is taking 50 story points, then all teams should take 50 story points. No, it depends on the strength of the team and how much work they can get done within a given sprint. So
Okay,
for instance, if you find out that okay, you're trying to do 50 story points and you're not able to finish it, two things may go wrong, may be wrong. Maybe you are not giving the right points to your stories. Maybe you are underestimating your stories, or maybe the story points is too much for that team. So you have to reduce the number of story points. So if at the end of the day they were only able to do 42 story points out of 50, for instance, you may have to consider, maybe you will not be able to deliver that much, or you find out the reason why at the end of the day, maybe the reason why you're not able to deliver 50 story points and you're only able to deliver 42. Maybe along the way you had to do some bug physics and that took some time, or some new stories, came up and that you had to quickly work on based on the priority.
Sure. Thank you. Let me rephrase the question again. Probably I didn't ask it the right way. For a new team, how do you determine the team velocity?
Okay, so for a new team, the way that I do it is I try as much as possible when we're starting, maybe we ask ourselves, because even for that new team, they don't really know the story points to give to a story yet. So they say a story, oh, you need to do this and this and this. Okay, yes. And maybe they play poker and they say, okay, yes, 2 story points is enough. They're just starting and maybe they're underestimating that story. So you work with that. Now, after your first sprint, you find out, okay, we were able to, we put maybe 30 story points in the sprint, and we're able to deliver on that 30 story points. As a Scrum Master, you don't want to push your team too much, but you think, okay, fine, I think that we still have some time, because in some cases, when doing your sprints, you see some team members already asking for more work, maybe they are done with all their tasks, then you know that you have not created, you have not put enough story points in that sprint. So that tells you automatically that you may need to expand the scope of work that you take in a given sprint. So that's for a new team. And for the time that you run your second sprint, you continue to develop, you continue to tweak it until you have a number that works for you, and you stick to that number and continue to improve on it. There's a question here that says, during the review, does the PO do the display or the developers? Now, what do you mean by display?
They're from the LinkedIn Live. I posted 4 questions that came from LinkedIn Live in there.
Okay, so I think display, what the person means by display is the demo. So it's the developers that do the demo, right? So in some cases, some of them have it on their systems, and they want to do the demo from their systems, or maybe from their machines, and they do the demo, and everybody is able to see the demo. I always try as much as possible to shine the light on the developers during sprint review, because that actually helps them and improves the synergy within the team. Another question says, how do you measure the team members' capacity? I think I just addressed that now. You have further questions? And by the way, there are a lot of books that that you can read to also improve on the way you run Scrum. So I tell people to listen to enough podcasts, listen to Scrum Masters or project managers from different parts of the world, and you can always take experiences from there. There are some books that I also try to read. I don't know, can I mention those books?
Yes, go right ahead.
So the books like The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. That's a very good book. There's another book, Essential Scrum, a practical guide to the most popular Agile process by Kenneth Rubin. And there's also one that I have, the Scrum Master Toolkit by Al Kraus. Maybe I can put the names for people that, most of these books, we can always get them. If you have a Kindle, or, we can always get them on Amazon. And, it's just to bundle your knowledge about the subjects and, get practical examples of, what people are doing. And by the way, even if you've been a project manager for 10 years, or you've been a Scrum Master for a long time, for each new team that you work with, it's a whole different experience because they are different individuals. Of course, the principles and the methodologies remain the same, but the way you go about pushing your principles and methodologies to people may be different. Yes, thank you, Ricky, for adding to that. Always allow your developers to shine, because a lot of people don't know who the people that are getting, the people that are doing the work, they don't really know them. So you want to give them that opportunity to shine during that sprint demo or review. Yes, Scrum Mastery is also a very good book. By Watts Geoff. It's also a very good book. So for those that may like to connect with me on LinkedIn, this is my LinkedIn address, or at Tunji Alao.